This is wild. People are saying that Jake Paul lost hundreds of millions of dollars on the fight that he was supposed to win. But that Anthony Joshua went against the tongue sign script and pounded him out. And what happened? Look at what happened. Anthony Joshua allegedly, kind of suspiciously, was involved in an accident that almost took his life. It took the life of 2 other people. So a lot of people are questioning.
Breaking news just detonated across the internet and flipped everything completely upside down. And no, that's not hype. That's reality hitting at full speed. We're talking pure chaos right now as Jake Paul is allegedly on the move, quietly leaving the country just as explosive new reports surface surrounding the Joshua incident. And people everywhere are spiraling, scrambling to connect dots that don't seem to want to line up. What actually happened behind those closed doors when the cameras were gone and the noise faded? And even more unsettling, why is all of this exploding into the open right now at this exact moment? Sources are whispering about panic, intense damage control unfolding in the shadows, and a sudden disappearance that's setting off alarms nobody can ignore anymore. The questions are stacking higher than the answers, and nothing feels accidental. Is this a clever escape plan, a calculated legal chess move, or are we witnessing something far bigger unravel in real time right in front of us? Stay locked in because what comes next doesn't just add details. It threatens to flip the entire story on its head. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this moment could rewrite everything you thought you knew about this shocking, unpredictable saga.
What's going on?
What's up, Floyd?
I can have what I want.
What you mean with the camera? Oh, he got camera too. So where you supposed to be? I'm just working, man.
What happened? You're not tough anymore since your loss? What happened since your loss? Yo, we gonna bust him up, guys?
I told you before, put that
Yo, let's bust him up. Where you running, Jake? Where you going since your fight? Since you lost? What's up, Jake?
The first thing that turns a quiet rumor into a raging wildfire isn't proof, it isn't documents, and it definitely isn't patience or caution creeping in to slow things down. It's that exact electric moment when the words federal agents and celebrity mansion land in the same sentence, and the atmosphere instantly changes. Suddenly, the internet shifts gears, and everyone online morphs into a part-time investigator armed with a full-time imagination running completely unchecked. The second those 2 ideas collide in a headline, you can almost feel the internet detonate in real time, with millions convinced they've uncovered secret knowledge, stitching together fragments like they're cracking some enormous hidden conspiracy. It's almost mesmerizing how fast people go from casually scrolling to fully locked in, turning into amateur detectives, spinning complex theories out of half-heard details, blurry clues, and unconfirmed whispers. Every missing piece gets filled with whatever version feels the most dramatic, the most shocking, the most cinematic, until the story grows larger than reality itself, fueled by speculation, urgency, and the irresistible thrill of believing you're watching something forbidden unravel right in front of you.
Paul's home was being raided by the FBI. News station helicopters got footage and pictures of Jake Paul's house being
Oh, they taking his guns and stuff, so there's gotta be something gun related? Like, damn. But that's a sticky situation right there.
Photos show the FBI SWAT team seizing guns, several guns. According to the local ABC station, the weapons included a long gun that was next to the hot tub in the backyard. This search is part of an ongoing investigation, and no arrest.
Reports of an FBI search at Jake Paul's Calabasas home didn't hit like ordinary news, not even close. And that difference is exactly why this moment matters so much. Ordinary news doesn't arrive wrapped in helicopter footage circling overhead, officers in tactical gear that feels ripped straight out of a military operation, sealed warrants no one is allowed to read, and that heavy, unsettling silence from officials that practically dares the public to start writing its own version of events. This wasn't a simple headline about something happening at a celebrity's house. This felt like a full-scale production, layered with the weight and intensity of a major event unfolding in real time. The visuals alone were enough to push people into overdrive, because when you see that level of law enforcement presence, your mind immediately spirals into one question after another about what could possibly demand such a response. And when no one is talking, when there's no clear explanation dropping, that silence turns into a vacuum, one the internet rushes to fill with speculation, theories, and increasingly wild narratives about what must be happening behind the scenes, just out of sight.
He's got raided by the FBI. What could this guy be possibly into now?
Connect outside of YouTube. Twitter was buzzing with photos and videos of SWAT teams at Jake Paul's house yesterday. And no, they are not fake. The FBI and a SWAT team showed up at Jake Paul's house with a search warrant. The search began at 6 a.m. in connection with an ongoing investigation, according to FBI spokeswoman Laura Miller. Jake was not at home at the time. Unfortunately for T channels and everyone else that wants to know the scoop, the judge sealed the search warrant affidavit, so we don't actually know too much about why.
When officials refuse to publicly explain what they were actually searching for during an operation like this, the internet does exactly what it always does. Without hesitation and without mercy, it starts constructing an entire narrative out of pure vibes, recycled headlines that may or may not even matter, and that deep-rooted assumption that every famous person is one reckless decision away from sprinting through an airport terminal like a desperate contestant on a high-stakes reality show, trying to dodge elimination. People begin connecting dots that might not even belong on the same page, let alone the same picture, dragging up past controversies, old tweets, forgotten incidents, and half-remembered scandals, then stitching them together into one sweeping storyline that feels believable not because it's proven, but because it's dramatic and confirms what many already wanted to believe. The internet doesn't wait for official statements when it can crowdsource an entire conspiracy theory in just a few hours, with thousands of voices each adding their own missing piece to the puzzle, layering speculation on top of assumption until suddenly there's this massive, detailed explanation for everything. One that sounds airtight, feels satisfying, and might have absolutely no grounding in actual reality at all.
Yeah, it's all prayers and blessings for Cena and Lots and Anthony, and I've kept them in my prayers, and it's such a tragic situation that we don't wish upon anybody, and I'm sending love to all of them and keeping them in our prayers, and I think everybody else should do the same, and we have so much love, and things are so much bigger than boxing and living life, and we're just all blessed to be here, and we all have to be grateful.
This is where the tone suddenly shifts hard from simple celebrity trouble into full-blown celebrity mythology. And that difference matters more than people realize. Because Jake Paul isn't treated like a normal public figure who occasionally stumbles into controversy. He's treated like an ongoing series that somehow keeps getting renewed for another season no matter how wild the last one was. Whatever happens next always arrives wrapped in a very specific brand of chaos that feels almost scripted in its intensity, not just because law enforcement showing up at a gated celebrity property is dramatic on its own, but because it collides with a fresh wave of claims that his fights are carefully arranged, tightly controlled, and designed more to protect a brand than to genuinely risk a jaw in real competition. In the same breath, commentators and analysts are arguing the matchup was ridiculous on paper from the very beginning, because it pairs a YouTuber turned boxer with a heavyweight champion who has spent years living in the deepest, most dangerous end of the sport. In that argument, the size difference, the pedigree gap, and the raw brutality of heavyweight boxing are treated like physics, like unbreakable laws of nature. Because physics doesn't care about marketing budgets, social media followers, or how many views your training clips pull in. And then there's the other side of the internet doing what it does best, insisting with absolute confidence that anything too profitable, too convenient, or too perfectly timed must also be too fake to be real. Because some people simply refuse to believe capitalism can produce nonsense and bizarre spectacles all on its own without a secret conspiracy or master plan pulling the strings behind the curtain.
Millions of dollars, people do not take it too kindly, and I can see the Vegas odds. If they're saying, look, he wins, he always wins, it's going to happen in the 6th round. But no, Anthony Joshua said, not on my clock. I'm going to break his jaw in two. Two, Johnny. Make it 2, Utah. Make it 2. What do you guys think about this? I don't know. Is this conspiracy theory? Is there some truth to it? I don't know. But it does seem pretty.
This is where the alleged fleeing story slides into the frame and suddenly starts picking up real momentum. Because once the public repeats a claim enough times across enough platforms, it stops sounding like a question or a loose possibility and quietly hardens into a narrative beat everyone treats as canon. The idea bouncing around forums, comment sections, and social media threads is that fresh reports about the Joshua incident appeared almost out of thin air. Pressure began squeezing in from multiple directions. And Jake Paul allegedly decided the safest place to exist during all this chaos was somewhere that was not here, somewhere well outside the immediate blast radius. That story spreads at lightning speed because it hits several irresistible buttons at once. Celebrity scandal, sports fraud suspicion, and the cinematic image of a famous figure slipping away from consequences by changing countries like it's a wardrobe swap or a last-minute vacation choice. Even if none of it is verified by a credible source, it thrives, mutates, and multiplies simply because it's entertaining, and entertainment will always outrun paperwork, official statements, and carefully verified facts. That's exactly why claims about scripts and fixed fights feel believable to some fans, even as officials and promoters insist with growing frustration that professional bouts can't be arranged or fixed without triggering legal consequences severe enough to destroy careers and entire organizations. Skepticism doesn't need proof to survive out in the wild, because it's constantly fed by sports history past scandals and a shared awareness that spectacle sells better than subtlety, and drama will always generate more clicks than straightforward competition ever could.
A little bit because, of the weight difference, and, Joshua is a former, champion. And also, he's current, he's active, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul fighting an active fighter. We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional, and so we'll see how it ends up like I said.
Jake Paul's entire boxing persona lives right on that thin fault line between pure entertainment and legitimate sport, and that placement is anything but accidental, because his rise has never been only about punches landed or training camps logged. It's also about attention engineering and brand building on an enormous scale. His critics line up what they see as deeply suspicious patterns, pointing to opponents chosen at just the right moments in their careers, fight pacing that sometimes feels strangely cooperative instead of brutally competitive, and a level of public confidence that can sound less like a fighter embracing risk and more like a marketing plan being executed step by step. Supporters fire back by emphasizing how hard he actually trains, the legitimate coaches he works with, the real boxers he steps into the ring against, and the simple fact that he keeps showing up, which is more than many loud internet personalities would ever do once punches start coming back with real force and real consequences attached. The uncomfortable truth is that both sides are holding pieces of the same puzzle, because Jake Paul is simultaneously a trained athlete who puts in serious work in a carefully constructed product designed to be sold, marketed, and consumed. Those two realities can exist at the same time, sharing the same space without canceling each other out or automatically making one of them false. And yet the scripting accusations keep resurfacing like an unskippable pop-up ad, impossible to close no matter how many times you hit the X. Because once people decide a fighter is a brand first and a boxer second, every move gets filtered through that belief, turning each action into calculated performance instead of genuine competition.
Everyone would have known it was rigged. He couldn't win that fight. So he said, let me get to round 5. Let me get there, because if I can get there, then everyone can make money. And the second round 4 hit, Anthony was ready. It was so obvious. It's so gross to me that I participated in this because I wanted to see him get knocked out. And that's exactly what he knows to be true. Most people want...
The Mike Tyson angle pours pure gasoline onto an already raging fire, because there is no faster way to ignite the internet and spark endless arguments than taking a legendary name with decades of history and dropping it straight into a modern influencer machine. Then asking everyone to act like this is completely normal and should be judged with a straight face. From the very start, the internet treated that fight as a cultural event first, a moment in entertainment history second, and an actual sporting contest maybe third, if at all, which meant it was always destined to be measured by spectacle instead of strict boxing standards. When you build something that massive, that aggressively promoted, and that soaked in nostalgia and social media hype, people aren't tuning and expecting a technical masterclass. They're showing up for a show, an experience, something larger than life that they can talk about, clip, share, remix, and turn into content of their own. The problem is that once you frame it as this enormous cultural moment, once you sell it as something historic, you quietly set the trap for disappointment, because reality almost never lives up to the cinematic version people construct in their heads. And that's exactly what unfolded here. People walked in carrying elaborate expectations about what they were about to witness. And when the real thing didn't match the fantasy, they didn't just shrug and move on. They went looking for a reason, an explanation, something or someone to blame for that hollow feeling of being let down.
Congratulations to Jake Paul for being brave to step in the ring with Anthony Joshua. Not many people will want to step in the ring with Anthony Joshua. Let me tell you something. If someone paid me $80 million to fight Anthony Joshua, I'm stepping in there tomorrow, right? No training, no nothing. I'm leaving straight from work. I fly to Miami, and I'll get my jaw broken for $80 million.
When a fight failed to match everyone's fantasy of vintage destruction and that explosive knockout they'd been replaying in their heads for weeks, some viewers instantly reached for the easiest, most comforting explanation for their disappointment, deciding it had to be staged, fixed, or quietly prearranged behind closed doors. Claims about leaked scripts and pre-planned moments spread across the internet like wildfire, hopping from platform to platform, because they offered a clean, satisfying story that felt far better than accepting the messy reality that age, timing, conditioning, and strategic choices can naturally produce underwhelming outcomes without any conspiracy at all. This is where the conversation turns deliciously ironic, almost comedic in its contradictions, because people accuse Jake Paul of manufacturing fights and controlling outcomes while simultaneously manufacturing entire documentaries inside their own heads using screenshots, out-of-context clips, and nothing but vibes. A supposed leak starts circulating through Discord servers and Reddit threads. Someone insists it predicted key moments with suspicious accuracy, and suddenly a massive portion of the audience treats it as unquestionable confirmation instead of coincidence or elaborate fanfiction. The logic becomes completely self-sealing and impossible to challenge, because any denial from officials is instantly framed as part of the cover-up, and any uncertainty or missing information is treated as proof that the truth is simply too dangerous or too damaging to reveal. At that point, the rumor no longer needs to be correct or supported by evidence. It only needs to be compelling and perfectly aligned with what people already want to believe. And in the modern attention economy, we're all living inside of compelling almost always beats correct, nearly every single time, without exception.
See him get chinned. I do. And if we're going to get paid a fortune for the pleasure, sign me up. That's it. That's it. You know, I mean, I'm kind of past the days of trying to spin it to you. Better off saying to the why are you doing this? For the money and for the giggles. That's really what it is. But I said to him, I said, this ain't magic, mate. This guy could take...
The skepticism isn't personal, and it's not really about Jake Paul as an individual. It's structural, rooted in the undeniable fact that Anthony Joshua has lived, trained, and competed at a level of professional danger and elite competition that Jake Paul has not consistently faced in his boxing career. The tension comes from the idea that this could be both a legitimate sporting contest complete with real rules and real consequences, and simultaneously a controlled spectacle engineered for maximum entertainment, which is exactly why people argue about it so loudly and with such passion. Each side is operating with a fundamentally different definition of what legitimate even means here. On one side, legitimacy is about rules, proper sanctioning from boxing organizations, legally binding contracts, and the full legal framework that keeps the sport from collapsing into something scripted, like professional wrestling. On the other side, legitimacy is competitive purity, the unpredictability of genuine risk, where either fighter could realistically lose, and the sense that the outcome isn't being shaped or influenced by negotiations or financial arrangements long before the bell rings. Jake Paul's critics frequently argue that even when something is technically legal and officially sanctioned, it can still be effectively engineered through careful matchmaking, timing, and financial incentives, because you don't actually need a pre-written script when you can simply handpick the cast and control the variables, quietly steering the story toward the outcome that benefits the brand while keeping the illusion of competition alive.
Has some big-ass balls, bro. No diddy. You know, it's just like to go in there with one of the best heavyweights to ever do it, Anthony Joshua, Olympian. You know, was he a gold medalist? Gold medalist. Wow.
2012.
That's what I'm saying. So, you know, my respects to obviously Jake, because man, that took a lot and he's robbing the bank, man.
Jake Paul's defenders push back hard. insisting that no serious fighter is going to deliberately risk public humiliation, physical injury, or career damage just to boost someone else's brand or line someone else's pockets, because pride, reputation, and survival instincts aren't commodities you can buy at any price, no matter how high the stakes. When a warrant is sealed by court order and officials offer little beyond minimal confirmation, that absence of detail becomes a blank canvas, one the public eagerly projects onto, painting in whatever story feels most plausible or aligns with their pre-existing beliefs. Patience is nowhere in the equation. People don't wait for official statements because patience doesn't trend on social media, it doesn't generate clicks or engagement, and in today's attention economy, nothing matters more than the story everyone can immediately discuss. That's exactly why old controversies get dragged back into the spotlight the moment a new one erupts, even if legally or factually they're completely unrelated. Over time, these separate incidents start to feel intertwined, stitched together in the public imagination into a single ongoing saga, a narrative arc that stretches across years, building tension, drama, and expectation, until each new development is experienced not in isolation, but as part of a larger, continuous story that people feel compelled to follow, dissect, and share.
We're going to tune in, and guess what we got? Jake Paul getting knocked out. He also made a lot of fucking money, and we are all just consuming it. If you believe in astrology, you will know this to be true. I looked up his natal chart. It's mostly earth energy. Everything he's doing is a fucking act. It's an act. He doesn't act that way at home. I guarantee it. He is a Capricorn, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Libra, Mars, and a Taurus moon. There's no way.
The alleged fleeing narrative feeds directly off that emotional current because it frames events as a dramatic escalation rather than a messy overlap of separate issues. In the version of the rumors spreading across platforms, new reports about the Joshua situation appear suddenly, the internet erupts. And Jake Paul supposedly decides in that very moment that he would rather be anywhere in the world than inside the immediate blast radius of this controversy. Phrases like fleeing the country get tossed around because they feel far more dramatic and loaded with implication than simply traveling or taking a planned trip. And drama is the actual currency being traded here. The internet thrives on consequences arriving like a storm, finally catching up to someone, because it turns life into a cinematic story with a satisfying narrative arc. And movies always have that iconic scene where someone desperately tries to outrun the plot. The reality, which often frustrates or disappoints audiences because it's mundane, is that travel is completely normal for celebrities, professional fighters, and entrepreneurs with business across multiple countries, and movement alone proves nothing about guilt or awareness of wrongdoing. The real challenge for Jake Paul isn't whether he can legally board a plane, of course he can, but whether the public will interpret a simple ticket as a confession or admission of guilt. Once the internet collectively decides you are guilty, every ordinary attempt to live a normal schedule becomes suspicious, because in the court of public opinion, optics are evidence. Staying put becomes hiding in plain sight. Leaving becomes running from consequences. Speaking becomes spinning or damage control. At this level of fame, you effectively lose simply by participating in the story at all because you do not control the narrative no matter how skilled your PR team is. You only feed it, hoping to nudge it in a slightly less damaging direction. Every action, statement, and decision gets dissected through the lens the audience has already chosen, and once perception takes hold, it is nearly impossible to shift. Fight-fixing accusations add a legal shadow that makes people salivate with anticipation. The moment you bring up sports betting and gambling money, the stakes instantly leap from internet drama and social media feuds into potentially serious legal trouble with real consequences. When large sums are wagered on a professional contest through legal platforms, manipulation or fixing isn't just a slap on the wrist or a stern warning from a judge. It could unravel trust in an entire ecosystem worth billions. That's exactly why promoters and officials push back so aggressively against the scripting narrative. They aren't just defending one fight. They're defending the credibility of sanctioned competition itself. They aren't arguing for fun or engagement. They're protecting a business model that relies on audiences believing the contest is real enough to matter and worth paying to watch. And yet, it's also undeniably true that boxing has spent decades training fans to be skeptical, suspicious, and cynical about nearly everything they see in the ring. The sports history is filled with controversies, questionable judging, and backstage maneuvering that leaves audiences watching with one eye open and one hand on their wallet. When fans already fundamentally distrust institutions and official statements, conspiracy theories thrive, especially when they match emotions and confirm pre-existing suspicions. The scripted fight discourse grows louder when discussions turn to training footage, sudden physique changes, or dramatic performance improvements, because that opens the door to a whole new category of accusations fans love to throw around. Speculation about substances, testing protocols, or contract negotiations gives people the sense of insider knowledge, the feeling that they understand what's happening behind the curtain. The danger is that speculation quickly becomes confident claims without evidence, and audiences stop analyzing, instead performing their own version of the truth. Combat sports have wrestled with performance enhancement for decades, but any allegation about an individual still demands proof, not vibes. Unfortunately, on social media, vibes are far more popular than proof, so the conversation keeps spiraling outward, growing more elaborate with each iteration. What makes this story explode is viral content, and what makes it so dangerous as a narrative is the way it blurs the line between real reporting from credible sources and unverified rumor, daring the audience to tell the difference. Federal agents did, in fact, search his property. That part is documented. But alongside there came massive waves of online speculation about arrest scripts and secret agreements, claims that are absolutely not facts, yet presented with the same level of certainty. The internet thrives on a redemption arc where someone falls and then rises again, but it loves a downfall arc even more, because downfall arcs carry that intoxicating sense of moral bookkeeping and cosmic justice finally being served. People crave stories with clear lessons because lessons make chaos feel meaningful rather than random. And that, strangely, is deeply comforting on a psychological level. Jake Paul, for better or worse, is often treated like the main character in this sprawling morality play about fame, influence, and the perilous moment when attention becomes a substitute for credibility and genuine achievement. He has become a symbol that people project onto, representing either everything they see as wrong with modern celebrity culture or everything they admire about building a brand, depending entirely on which side of the argument they occupy. At this point, the story isn't really about one person anymore. It's about what that person represents to millions of people who have never met him, yet feel intimately invested in every chapter of his unfolding narrative.